There are ideas that sound so simple and so right that you just want to believe them. Like when you were a kid and it seemed like any problem could be solved in one fell swoop. Protect our own. Bring the factories home. Make everyone buy American? And here it is, the magic solution. Let's just slap a huge 50% tariff on everything imported into our country. Simple, right? The store shelves will only have our own homegrown products. The money will stay in America. The jobs will come back. It sounds like a perfect plan. Perfect, simple, and absolutely catastrophically wrong. This plan isn't just an economic mistake. It's hitting the self-destruct button, disguised as a patriotic slogan. It's a promise of paradise that will lead us straight into a hell of economic depression, empty shelves, and international isolation. Hiding behind this simple idea is a tsunami capable of washing away not just your savings, but the very prosperity of America that was built over decades. We are going to do what the authors of this idea don't. We're going to look under the hood of this simple solution. We're not going to throw around loud slogans. We're going to do the math. We will trace the path of a single dollar, a single part, a single product from a factory in Asia to a store shelf in Ohio. We will see how this seemingly simple step will hit your wallet, your job, the future of your children, and the status of the United States in the world. So, get ready. We are embarking on a journey to take apart the most dangerous economic idea of our time. And I promise, after this, you will never look at a price tag in a store the same way again. Let's start with the simplest and most relatable thing for each of us, our own wallets. The first wave from a 50% tariff won't hit China or Mexico. It will hit the cash register at your local supermarket. To understand the scale of the disaster, let's do a thought experiment. Let's take a regular shopping cart and walk through the store. Here are some bananas from Ecuador. Let's say they cost $1 a pound. Now, you have to add 50 cents to that price, just like that. Here's a bag of shrimp from Vietnam for $12. Now it costs $18. Here's olive oil from Italy. It was $15. Now it's $22.50. Let's keep going. Need a new pair of sneakers? 99% of all footwear sold in the U.S. is made overseas. Your favorite $100 sneakers will instantly turn into $150 sneakers. And that's the best-case scenario, because retailers will also want to protect their profit margins and will tack on even more. Decided to update your wardrobe? A $15 t-shirt from Bangladesh will now cost you $22. $50 jeans from Mexico will become $75, and so on, down the entire list. Electronics? Forget about it. Your iPhone, assembled in China from components sourced all over the world, will skyrocket in price from $1,000 to $1,500, if not more. And it doesn't matter that Apple is an American company. What matters is where the product is physically made. But someone will say, wait, this only affects imported goods. I'll buy American. And this is where we encounter the biggest and most unpleasant surprise. In the modern world, there are practically no 100% American-made products. Globalization isn't just a fancy word. It's an incredibly complex web where the economies of all countries are intertwined. Let's take an icon of American industry, the automobile. For example, a Ford F-150 pickup truck assembled in Michigan. What could be more American? But let's look at its components. The engine might be assembled in the U.S., but its crankshaft is forged in India. The transmission is made in Mexico. The electronic control unit is from Taiwan. The wiring harness is from Honduras. The tires are from Canada. The plastic for the bumper is made from Saudi oil. Every single one of these components crossing the U.S. border will have a 50% tariff slapped on it. What does this mean for the Ford plant? It means the cost of producing a single truck will increase by thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. And what will the company do? It will pass those costs on to the consumer. As a result, the American pickup will become just as expensive as an imported Toyota or Honda, and perhaps even more so because American auto giants have some of the most extensive and complex international supply chains. The same goes for absolutely everything. An American farmer growing wheat uses a John Deere tractor, but that tractor has electronics from South Korea and hydraulics from Germany. That means a new tractor will become more expensive, and in turn, the bread in your store will get more expensive. Even if the loaf says, made in America from American wheat. The first, most obvious and painful conclusion from this section is this. A blanket tariff is just a giant tax on the consumer, a tax on everyone and everything. It doesn't distinguish between the rich and the poor, but it hits the poor the hardest. Because for people with low incomes, rising prices for food, clothing, and transportation aren't just an inconvenience. They're a catastrophe. The standard of living will fall sharply and inevitably. The purchasing power of the population will collapse. People will stop spending money on anything but the bare necessities, and this, in turn, will trigger a chain reaction that will hit the entire economy. Stores will start closing because they have no customers. The service sector, restaurants, movie theaters, hair salons will plunge into a deep crisis. The inflation we've seen in recent years will seem like child's play compared to the price tsunami that will engulf the country. So, we understand that the wallets of ordinary Americans will empty almost instantly. But the main goal of this whole idea is the revival of American industry, the return of jobs. Politicians promise us that as soon as imported goods become prohibitively expensive, American companies will immediately start building new factories and hiring millions of workers. On paper, it sounds logical, but in the real world, things are much more complicated. Let's move on to the second block and see what would actually happen to American business and the labor market. Let's imagine the owner of an average American business. Let's say it's a company that produces kitchen blenders in Ohio. Our owner, let's call him John, might even be happy at first hearing the news about a 50% tariff. His main competitor, cheap blenders from China, will now be 1.5 times more expensive. This seems like the chance of a lifetime. But John's joy will be short-lived. The very next morning, he'll receive emails from his suppliers. It will turn out that the electric motors for his American blenders are made in Malaysia. The plastic for the housing is from South Korea. The stainless steel blades are from Germany. And all these suppliers will inform him that due to the new tariff, the cost of his components is increasing by 50%. Suddenly, John realizes that the production cost of his own blender is also skyrocketing. He faces a choice: either raise the price for the end consumer, risking that his already struggling fellow citizens will simply stop buying blenders, or operate at a loss and go bankrupt in a few months. And herein lies the fundamental fallacy of protectionism. They see the world as a simple picture from 100 years ago. Here is our factory. There is theirs. In reality, we live in a world of global supply chains. To sever them overnight is like shooting yourself in the foot to spite the shoemaker. Okay, you might say, but over time, John can find American suppliers for motors and steel. And here we run into the second problem: time, money, and technology. You can't just snap your fingers and build a factory for modern microchips or high-quality steel. It requires billions in investment, decades of research and development, and most importantly, a skilled workforce that, in some industries, simply doesn't exist in the U.S. By the time John finds investors, designs the factory, and trains the staff, years will have passed. In that time, his business will most likely be dead. Moreover, many manufacturing processes, especially in electronics, are so complex and concentrated in specific regions of the world, like Taiwan, that recreating them in the U.S. in the foreseeable future is practically impossible and economically unfeasible. But that's not even the worst part. The most powerful blow to the American economy will come from what will inevitably follow the imposition of such tariffs: retaliation, a trade war. The rest of the world will not sit idly by and watch America destroy global trade. The European Union, China, Japan, Canada, Mexico, they will all immediately impose their own mirror image tariffs, but they won't strike randomly. They will target the most vulnerable and iconic points of American exports. Let's look at specific examples. The European Union will impose a 50% tariff on Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Kentucky bourbon, and Levi's jeans. China, the largest buyer of American agricultural products, will impose a tariff on soybeans from Iowa, pork from Nebraska, and almonds from California. Japan will hit American beef and Boeing aircraft. Canada and Mexico, our closest trading partners with whom we have enormous trade volume, will impose tariffs on cars, equipment, and food. What will this mean in practice? A farmer in Iowa who has spent his life growing soybeans and selling them to China will lose his market overnight. His silos will be full of a harvest no one wants, and the banks will demand loan repayments. The Harley-Davidson factory in Wisconsin, which sent a significant portion of its production to Europe, will be forced to cut production and lay off hundreds, if not thousands, of workers. Engineers in Seattle working for Boeing will be at risk of layoffs because airlines around the world will start buying European Airbus planes instead of American ones, which have become prohibitively expensive due to retaliatory tariffs. In other words, the very jobs we were trying to bring back, we will start losing, and in our strongest, most competitive industries, we won't create new jobs. We will simply redistribute unemployment by destroying successful export companies and perhaps creating a few inefficient ones that can only survive by charging artificially high prices to domestic consumers. The conclusion from this second block is grim. Trying to wall ourselves off from the world with a 50% barrier will not lead to an industrial renaissance. On the contrary, it will cause the collapse of existing supply chains, make American goods uncompetitive even in the domestic market, and provoke a massive retaliatory strike from our trading partners. This will lead to mass bankruptcies in export-oriented industries and a rise in unemployment. The dream of returning factories will turn into the harsh reality of destroying the most efficient part of the American economy. So, we see the picture. Ordinary Americans are suffering from monstrous inflation. Businesses are going bankrupt due to broken supply chains and retaliatory sanctions. It seems like it can't get any worse, but in fact, we haven't even gotten to the most important part. We've been talking about the economy at the level of companies and consumers. Now, let's rise to the highest level and see what this step would mean for the United States as a world leader, for our currency, and for the entire world order that America itself has built over the last 80 years. Let's move to the third and darkest block of our analysis. To understand what happens next, you need to grasp one simple thing. America's greatest strength isn't its aircraft carriers or Hollywood. It's the dollar. The U.S. dollar is the lifeblood of the global economy. The vast majority of international contracts are denominated in dollars. Oil is sold for dollars. Goods from China to Europe are sold for dollars. When Brazil buys something from Germany, it pays in dollars. This gives the United States incredible privileges. We can print money that the whole world needs. We can borrow at low interest rates because all countries want to hold their reserves in safe U.S. Treasury bonds. We can impose sanctions and cut off rogue nations from the global financial system because that system is built on our currency. The status of the dollar as the world's reserve currency is the foundation of our prosperity and our influence. And so, by imposing a 50% tariff on all imports, America is essentially declaring economic war on the rest of the world, not just on adversaries, but on our closest allies. It's a signal to everyone. The rules no longer apply. America is becoming an unpredictable and toxic partner. And what will be the world's reaction? The world will start frantically looking for an alternative. No one will want to keep their savings in the currency of a country that can crash the entire global trade system with a single decision. Countries will begin to actively divest from dollars and U.S. government bonds. China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa have long been working on creating alternative payment systems. Such a move by the U.S. would be a godsend for them. Other countries, even former U.S. allies, would immediately join their union. The European Union would be forced to urgently strengthen the role of the euro to protect its economy. Arab countries might start selling oil not for dollars, but for yuan or euros. The entire world would begin to feverishly build a new financial architecture in which there is simply no place for the United States. What does this mean for us, for ordinary Americans? It means a catastrophe compared to which the inflation from tariffs will seem trivial. First, if the world starts dumping dollars, their value will plummet. All imported goods, even without any tariffs, will become even more expensive. A vacation to Europe will become an impossible dream. Second, if foreigners stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, it will become incredibly difficult for our government to finance its giant budget deficit. Interest rates will soar. A mortgage at 20%, easily, a car loan at 30%, no problem. Our entire economy, built on cheap credit, will simply grind to a halt. But that's not all. Losing the status of the reserve currency is not just an economic problem. It's a geopolitical one. America will lose its main lever of influence on the world stage. Our sanctions will stop working. Our word will no longer be law. Our allies in Europe and Asia, seeing our irrationality and inability to be a reliable partner, will be forced to find new protectors and build new alliances. The U.S. will find itself in complete international isolation. We will, with our own hands, destroy the very world order that has ensured our security and prosperity since World War II, and we will hand over leadership to our main geopolitical rivals. The final conclusion of this block is simple and terrifying. A 50% tariff isn't just shooting yourself in the foot, it's shooting yourself in the head. It is an act of economic and geopolitical suicide. It will not make America great again. It will turn it into an isolated, impoverished country with a collapsed currency and shattered credibility. It is a path not to prosperity, but to the status of a third world country. And so, we've reached the end of our journey. Let's pause for a moment and look back at the path we've traveled. We started with the simplest thing, the receipt at the grocery store. And we saw how a 50% tariff would instantly make every one of us poorer, triggering a spiral of rampant inflation that would affect absolutely all goods, even those made in America. Then we moved to the factories and farms, and we realized that instead of the promised industrial boom, we would get a collapse of supply chains and a devastating trade war that would destroy our most successful export industries and lead to mass unemployment. And finally, we took a bird's-eye view of the situation and saw the most terrifying scenario: the collapse of the dollar, the loss of world leadership, and the international isolation of the United States. The picture we've painted is, frankly, apocalyptic. And at this moment, the main question arises: if it's all so bad, why is this idea even being discussed? Why are there millions of people willing to vote for it? The answer, I believe, lies not in economics, but in psychology. This idea is a very simple answer to very complex questions. People are hurting. They see the factories where their fathers and grandfathers worked shutting down. They feel that the system is not working for them. They want to find someone to blame and punish them. And then politicians come along who say they are to blame other countries that are playing an unfair game. And the solution is very simple. Let's build a wall, and all our problems will be solved. This is very seductive rhetoric. It appeals to a sense of justice, to resentment, to a desire to return to a bygone golden age. But, as we have discovered today, economic reality is far more complex. There is no simple switch that can take us back to the 1950s. The world has changed. The economies of all countries have intertwined into a single complex organism, and trying to sever one part of it will not lead to healing, but to the death of the entire organism, including ourselves. The problems America faces, job losses, growing inequality, are real. But they need to be treated with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. The solution is not to wall ourselves off from the world, but to become stronger and more competitive within this global system. This means investing in education so that our children are prepared for the jobs of the future, not the past. It means investing in science and new technologies to create products that no one else in the world can make. It means building modern infrastructure, roads, bridges, high-speed internet so that our businesses can operate more efficiently. It means pursuing smart, not aggressive trade policy, making agreements that benefit America, not starting wars in which there are no winners. Yes, these are difficult, long, and not so glamorous paths. They don't promise a miracle overnight, but they are the only paths that lead to real, not imagined prosperity. I want you to understand me correctly. The purpose of this video is not to scare you. The purpose is to make you think. Economics is not about party affiliation. It's not a matter of faith. For the most part, it's a matter of math. And in this case, the math is crystal clear. A 50% tariff is a disaster for the vast majority of Americans. So, the next time you hear someone offer a simple, quick fix for complex economic problems, be very skeptical. Ask questions, check the facts, be curious about how the world around you works. In the modern world, the most important currency is not the dollar or the yuan, it's knowledge, and the most important skill is critical thinking. If this video has helped you better understand how the global economy really works and what the real stakes are in this game, then I consider my job done. Share it with your friends and family, discuss it, and most importantly, be an informed citizen. Because ultimately, the future of this country depends not on politicians, but on us. Thank you for your time and attention. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dives, and write in the comments which aspect of this scenario surprised you the most. See you next time.